To turn it over to Della Larsen.
So I'm going to go, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And all right. Okay. So hopefully you can all see that. So we're going to be talking about how you can use boom cards in your classroom. And this is really strategies because now that we're back face to face, we need to know how do we use boom actually in the class. So let's talk about that. So first of all, who am I? My name is Della, and I have been teaching in a public school for 34 years, and I retired last year. And I spent most of my time, well, not most of, all of my time teaching in a large urban city in the Northeast. And I know that I don't have a Boston accent, so you can't tell that I'm from Boston. Some people say I do. And I started my career teaching children with autism. And then I moved into a typical classroom, and I spent the last 20 years teaching in a typical kindergarten classroom. And after 34 years, I retired, and now I spend my time creating digital resources and trying to help and support teachers who are learning platforms and bringing digital resources into their class. So today, what we're going to kind of cover is, should we be using digital in the classroom? And I think you can guess that my answer is yes, we should definitely be using digital in the classroom. And then I'm going to try to give you some strategies for implementing boom cards in a face-to-face classroom. So first of all, before we get into the strategies, I really want to talk about why we should be using boom specifically. So last year during the pandemic, everybody went remote, right? And lots of teachers have kind of put remote teaching and digital resources into that same box. And most of us did not like remote teaching, but digital resources are really very different than remote teaching, and we can be using them in the classroom. Long before the pandemic hit, or anyone had ever heard the term remote teaching, I was using boom cards in my class. And I started using boom cards for a very specific reason. I had 22 kindergartners, and I did have a part-time para. She was in there 2 days a week. But my building had so many teachers call in sick every day that my boss would pull my para to cover other classes. And I know that this is common in lots of schools, and I know some of you have definitely had that. And I thought to myself, how am I going to meet the needs of all of these kids? They just seemed so needy. Their skills were so far apart. And I thought, what on earth am I going to do? What strategies can I have? What techniques can I use to meet the needs of all of these kids? And honestly, to keep me from like going crazy. And so I learned about boom cards, and I started making boom cards for my class, and my kids loved them. Now, this was long before there were any movable pieces or sound files or anything like that. There was just the old-fashioned button when I started, but my kids loved them. And every single day they asked for them. So I started to think, wow, this boom is really something. It's really, really powerful. So I made more and more. And there's lots of reasons why kids love them. Number one, boom cards are really, really engaging. They have movable pieces, they have sound files, some of them have video mini lessons, and there are even escape rooms on Boom. Now, they bring an element of learning to your students that you just cannot get from a worksheet. I also have told the creator of Boom that there's something about that ding that my kids loved. And that honestly brings me to one of the most powerful pieces of Boom, and that's that they provide immediate feedback. Now, when our students receive immediate feedback, it informs their learning. It stops them and it gives them information about what they're doing. So I want you to kind of think about it. If you were in a yoga class and you're trying to make a pose, right? You're trying to do the pose. And if the instructor comes over and she just kind of moves your arm or slightly changes your torso, all of a sudden that pose becomes so much more powerful. And that is what Boom does with the immediate feedback. It shifts their learning and adjusts their thinking in real time. And that makes the learning so much more powerful. It deepens their understanding. Now, if you teach in the upper grades and you have live monitoring on your Boom membership, I didn't have it in kindergarten because I didn't have enough devices. I mean, well, I did have live monitoring, but I didn't use it because I didn't have enough devices in my classroom to use it. But I have friends who teach in the upper grades and they would have their kids all on their Chromebooks and they could use the live monitoring feature to see in real time how the kids were performing. And I had friends who, as soon as they saw that a child got 3 in a row incorrect, they stopped them, they shut them down, they pulled them up to the table, and they provided immediate intervention. Now, that is so powerful. If you can see in real time, you have all those kids in front of you, but you can see that there's a couple who are struggling, you stop them, you bring them up, you provide intervention, and then you send them back. That is power. So one of the other features that I love about Boom is that it's easy to differentiate. So I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, I think, nope, okay, sorry. It's easy to differentiate. You can use Boom cards for every student in your class. So if you have students who are above grade level, you can address their needs. If you have students who are below grade level, you can address their needs. Simply by clicking on a new deck and assigning that to the learner in your class, you are now, you are giving them skills that they need to work on. My boss always wanted us to have really detailed lesson plans. And one of the pieces of our lesson plan was, how are we differentiating for every student in our class? I had a variety of children that were ELLs, children for whom English was not their first language, and I had a variety of children with special needs. And if I were doing a lesson in my class, my boss wanted to know, what are you doing to provide that lesson for your students that will meet their needs? And when it comes to Boom, it's so easy to answer that question. You can add the sound feature, and that can really provide the vocabulary that some of my kids needed. Now, if you teach in the younger grades, you have probably seen worksheets that have all kinds of images for phonics. And some of them kind of are a real head scratcher, right? You're looking at it thinking, I don't even know what this image is supposed to be. And that's the same for our kids. But when it comes to Boom, we can offer them that sound feature that will scaffold their learning. So think for a minute, if you wanted to have your students identify the beginning sound of the word red. So when I make a deck and I have red, it's literally a red crayon. But for a student who's not sure, they don't know if that's supposed to be a crayon. Is it red? Is it picture? Is it drawing? They don't know what that image is. So there's no way they're going to be able to provide me with the information that I'm looking for. But with Boom, there's a sound feature. So not only do they see red, but they can hear that this vocabulary word is red. And now I know I'm actually assessing the skill that I want to assess. And think of, if you teach in the upper grades, maybe you have word problems. And if your student is not a great reader, maybe they have dyslexia, it's difficult to try to assess their math skill if they have to read to get there. And so with Boom, we can have the sound file read the word problem to the student. It's almost like having an assistant sitting directly next to them and helping them access the curriculum. This is really powerful, and it gives us the information that we need so that we can actually assess the skill that we want to assess, whether it's phonics or whether it's math. If we have those sound files, we're actually assessing the skill that we want to assess. So, so, so important. And this brings me to the reports feature. This is probably my favorite feature because, again, my boss wanted to know in my lesson plan how I was going to determine if a student actually understood the skill. We had to put it in our lesson plans. And this is one of the places that a lot of teachers had a hard time with, because you can't constantly do assessments all day long with every lesson. But my boss expected that. So with a Boom card, you have the built-in assessment. At the end of that Boom deck, you are going to see what their accuracy was. So I could write that lesson plan with confidence because I knew not only how I was going to differentiate for all the students in my class, but how I was going to determine if they understood the skill. Because for us, the target was 80%. So if my student was able to hit 80% accuracy, I knew I could move them to the next step. If they didn't hit 80% accuracy, I moved it down, or I retaught it, or I put in a little intervention. And that reports feature becomes crucial when you're meeting with parents, when you're trying to advocate for a child for special services. It's really, really powerful. And we have that. We can take a printout of that, put it in our students file, and there's your progress monitoring. Done. It's so, so powerful. So one of the best things about Boom is that it works on a variety of devices, whether you have a desktop, a laptop, a Chromebook, an iPad. It works on everything, even my phone, and I use it on my phone a lot. But just keep in mind, if you're going to use Boom on your phone or on a tablet, download the Boom app, because especially if you have movable pieces, it works so much better if you have the app and you're not accessing the website. But on a desktop or laptop Chromebook, go ahead and access it on the website. But keep that little tip in mind. If you're using something where you can download an app, download that app, because it really does work so much better. So let's talk about what exactly you can do with Boom in your classroom. So when I started, I really started using Boom as an extension of my reading groups. So I would call up my students and I would provide a lesson, introduce a skill, read a story, but then I would take that same group. So I would have maybe 3, 4, 5 kids, and I would provide that lesson, just a traditional guided reading group. But then what I did with those kids is I took that group of kids and I put them at a table right next to me. And I called that kind of the double dip table. And I would have them log in. And if we were working on, let's say, sight words, I would have them go to that table and work on sight words. If we were working on comprehension, I would move them over and work on a comprehension deck. And it was a great way to not only give them the double dip to assess if they can do it, but it provided them independent practice. And you know that if you can increase that independent work, it decreases the distractions on you, and you can focus better on the kids who are actually in front of you. So by providing that double dip, it really helped work on the skill that we were working on, increased the independence. And if you work in the younger grades, you know that one of the hardest things about having reading groups is what you're supposed to do with the rest of the kids. In college, they tell you all about how to have a guided reading group, how to teach reading, but they never quite tell you what you're supposed to do with the other 18 kids who are now like having a hard time. So by taking your reading group and then having them moved kind of to the next set, they're over here. Now you're taking kind of 8 to 10 kids out of the general population. So there are less kids out in the class that you have to worry about. And if you do it strategically, you can have those kids kind of spread out. Another piece of that reading group that I found really helpful is, so I call these kids popcorn kids, and we all have them. They're the kids who struggle a little bit. Behaviorally, they challenge us. They have a hard time staying focused. They're very distracting, and they distract the other kids around them. And it makes it difficult to have a guided reading group if you have what I call a popcorn kid out into the class who's, taking someone's crayon or dropping something, is constantly needing things. So if you take your 1 or 2 popcorn kids and you have them sit right next to you and you give them a boom deck to work on, they're right near you, but you can keep them engaged and working and independent, and you can keep them from distracting the rest of the crew. So it makes your excuse me, it makes your reading groups go so much more smoothly because you have your kids you're providing direct instruction to, then they move on to the double dip table, you take up another group, you've got your popcorn kids here, and you only have a few kids out into the general population that you need to make sure stay engaged. It's a lot easier to keep 12 kids engaged than 18. So those are the ways that I used it in my reading groups. And then I love, love, love to use boom cards in my math and literacy centers. So I, as I said, worked in kindergarten. So we had centers, and I love to use boom as a way to kind of extend our topic. So let's say you're working on, the life cycle of the pumpkin. You might have a center over here where they're writing about the pumpkin. You might have something over here where they're drawing something, drawing a picture of a pumpkin. They might be listening to a story about the pumpkin. Your dramatic play area might be a pumpkin patch. You can extend that a unit of study by using boom cards. So there are boom cards literally on every topic for every level. But if you used a life cycle of the pumpkin boom deck, not only are they getting, I'm just referring to my own, a mini lesson about the life cycle of the pumpkin, they're getting comprehension about the life cycle of the pumpkin, they're getting vocabulary about the life cycle of the pumpkin. So you can really extend that in a center, and it makes that unit of study so much more powerful, whether it's about pumpkins or owls or wolves or salmon or whatever it is that you're studying. I guarantee there's a boom deck on it, right, in the library, in the store. Another way in centers that I love to do centers with boom is using a QR code. So you can use the fast play pin, or you can use the hyperplay link, and you can just take that link and you can go to a simple QR code creator. You put it in and it will give you the QR code. You can see it on the screen, and you just download that and you pop it. I used to pop it in a frame. You can put it on a 3x5 card. It doesn't matter where it is. And then the kids come with their iPad, boom, they just scan it and they're ready to go. It brings them immediately to the deck if you use that fast pin, or it can they sign in if you use the hyperplay link. But a QR code is so great, and you can actually color code them. So I use these frames. I don't know, I think I got them at the Christmas tree shop. I don't even know. They were like $1, but you can color code them. So you can have maybe a math QR code that's in the green frame for your lower group. You could have a red one for a higher group. And you can strategically kind of place those QR codes in those frames. And you can say, Jaden, I want you to do the Green Math Center. So easy, and they access it immediately. The other piece about using boom cards in centers is it holds our kids accountable. So if you teach in the younger grades and you have lots of centers up, you know, sometimes they don't do what they're supposed to be doing over there. And you've got a lot of kids and you're trying to manage them all. You can't always get to every center to make sure that you hold them accountable to do what it is that you want them to do. But with Boom, there's built-in accountability. They either did it and you have the data, or they didn't. And so you can easily hold them to do what they're supposed to do. I can't tell you how many centers that I've had my kids go to, like, let's say, stamp a sight word or something, and they're literally like stamping their arm, they're stamping the table. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And with Boom, I know that at my centers, they're actually doing what I want them to do. So I love using Boom for my centers. I mean, intervention groups, it is just built in for intervention groups. When we talk about this year particularly, we're going to have a lot of kids who did not have a traditional year last year. Teachers everywhere bent over backwards to provide their kids with everything they possibly could to make sure they did not fall behind. But the reality is, we're going to have kids who show up with holes and gaps in their learning. They missed some pieces of last year. This is especially true of the younger grades, where they would have been in a classroom really learning how to read. And so now coming into this year, we're going to have kids who have gaps, and we're going to have to fill those gaps. And intervention groups are definitely a way to do that. But the backbone of intervention groups is data, is looking at the data, deciding what do they know, what do I need to teach them, how can I reassess, did they learn it, and move them up that chain to get them to where they want. You cannot have an intervention group without data, and it is so cumbersome to try to take data on the kids who are in your intervention groups. But Boom will take that data for you. So you can then focus your attention on being with that child in the moment, and not on, keeping track of what they've got. And then after the fact, you can go back and look and say, yeah, they got 87%. They're ready to move on. Or, oh my goodness, they got 43%. I've got to really back this up and rethink what comes next. So important for intervention groups. It also provides that scaffolding, right? We talked about that before. The sound features, the mini lessons. So many Boom decks come with a little mini lesson ahead of time that kind of reteaches that skill, almost in that flipped lesson style, giving them a little mini lesson video first, and then following it up with a deck to check for understanding. And when we have those video mini lessons, and we have those sound files, and we have colorful images, and you can even have real world images on there, it really supports their vocabulary, and it supports their comprehension, and it really does provide that scaffolding that they're going to need to meet meet the skills that they need to meet. And also, we go right back to that same thing again with the immediate feedback. If kids start making the same mistake over and over again, it's hard to change it. And Boom will stop them and say, whoops, and they have to come up with the correct answer. So that immediate feedback is so important for informing the students' learning to deepen their understanding. So, I mean, Boom cards were literally made for intervention groups. They're perfect for them. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite ways to use Boom cards, and that is in a large group. So you can introduce a lesson on a smart board, or you can do it for fun. Now, when I used my smart board, I did it mostly for fun. And my kids loved when I brought out the boom cards on the smart board, and you just project it up onto your board. And what I would do, and again, this was for younger kids, it might not work in middle school, but it worked great for the younger kids. We would make kind of a conga line all around the classroom, and the kids would come up and click and move along, click, move along, click, move along. And it got them moving around the room, got them up and moving around, and it was a fun activity. This is perfect for reviewing a skill that you know they've pretty much got, or for that 5-minute filler, you know, those 5 minutes, you finish the lesson and you still have 5 minutes before lunch or 5 minutes before gym. And it's like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? But you can pull up a boom deck onto your smart board, and whether you do a conga line or you just keep the kids sitting down and call them up, it's a great way to fill that time. And here's a little tip for behavior management. You can make kind of a boom ambassador, and they can stand at the front of the screen. And if they follow directions, right? If you want to be the boom ambassador, you've got to follow directions. I can see Jaden wants to be the ambassador because he's sitting so quietly. Kids love power, and you can have them come up and be their boom ambassador, and they stay at the front of the board and they call on the kids to come up. That, I'm telling you, when you get to call on your friends and have them come up when they're raising their hand, that is like the definition of power in a kindergarten class. So if you're going to use a smart board like this with the whole group, what I recommend you do is create a ghost student. So you know how in your classroom you have all your kids listed, put in ghost, or like make up a name, but I used to just say ghost. And put the decks in, assign the decks to the ghost that you know are kind of your fun decks, your decks that the kids are all pretty competent in. And then when it's time to project it up onto the board, it's super easy to just go in, log in as the ghost, and then the decks are right there. So there's a little tip for you. It really does make it easier if you have a ghost. And that way, because the data is going to get all muddled up because you've got 22 kids in that deck, so you don't want to use one of your students' decks because it muddles up their data. So just create a ghost student so the data won't matter. So another great way to use Boom is for homework. Now I'm going to just come clean with you right now. I am not a fan of homework. Especially in the younger grades, in even honestly in the upper grades, I just think kids should be outside, playing outside. And when they're inside, I think they should be reading books, and they should be talking to the people in their house, talking to their parents, talking to their siblings. I would much rather my kids go home and talk for 20 minutes than do almost anything else that I can think of. But my district, and I'm sure your district, required us to provide so many minutes of homework every day. So I used boom cards, and I always sent a fast pin home because, again, just like with the group work, I don't know who's doing it. I mean, we've all got those papers back from homework that clearly mom did, right? I mean, you did not do this. And so I always use a fast pin, just again, for that exact same reason. I don't want to muddle up their data because I don't know if their older brother's doing it, their younger sister's doing it, or mom is doing it. And by just having a fast pin, there is no data. They're getting access to quality skills. And so I'm fine with no data for that. And there's the benefit of they didn't forget to put their folder in their bag. The dog literally did not eat their homework. It's just much easier. Now, if your administrator wants to see some type of documentation, what you can do is, I used to send the FastPin home either through Google Classroom, or I would do it in an email or a text to my kids. We used Class Dojo in my room. So you can just literally text it to them through the Class Dojo app. Could not be easier. And I would just ask the parents to respond back. We completed it. Loved the deck. He did it 3 times, whatever. And that was my documentation. And if your boss really wants to see a piece of paper, you can send them home a piece of paper that says, do the boom deck and color in the stars for each time you finish. You know what I mean? Like, you can just come up with something like that. But I hated standing in line at the copy machine. It was always jammed, and you spent your whole lunch standing in line. And although I love chatting with my coworkers, I would have much rather chat with them in the teacher's room over lunch than at the copy machine. So using Boom for homework is really easy. It saves you a ton of time, and it's actually meaningful for the kids. And if you work in the inner city like I did, a lot of my kids, they didn't have pencils, they didn't have crayons, they didn't have glue sticks, they didn't have scissors. So to send them worksheets home, it just didn't work. And Boom really, really worked for homework. So one other way that I like to use Boom is for morning work and fast finishers. So my kids used to come in all at staggered times, and I didn't love having them do worksheets first thing in the morning, because they all kind of came in at different times. Some kids were finished, other kids didn't start yet. And I just felt like before the day started, they were already behind. So I didn't love that. And then I tried to bring out centers, and I would have a couple of centers put out, just kind of controlled centers. But even that, before we even got to the rug, I had to clean up the blocks or the Play-Doh or the whatever. But with Boom, it's super easy, because I would put out a couple of Chromebooks, a couple of iPads. The kids would come in, and I would, again, just have a FastPin on the table. So they would just log in, use the FastPin, and they were right there. And I didn't care if there were 2 or 3 kids on the same deck, because oftentimes in the morning it's kind of casual. So one kid would be at the Chromebook, another one would be over his shoulder. Oh, it's this one. So again, I didn't want to muddle up the data, but it was a way to provide them with engaging skills before the day even started. So I love to have Boom cards as morning work, and so easy, because then you just close the screen or turn off the iPad and you're ready for the rug. Now, you heard me talk about my popcorn kids. I also used to have a group of Zoomers, and my Zoomers were those kids who were 1 to 2 grades above everybody else. We all have them. Those kids who are just super advanced. They show up the first day of kindergarten, they're already reading. And to be honest with you, those kids used to hurt my heart more than anybody else, because the thought of holding them back and waiting for everyone to catch up just was the worst. And I didn't always have the materials to keep pushing them forward. And you're going to get a call from those parents that say, Johnny is bored and he needs some work that's more difficult. And it is much easier to go on to the Boom store and look for a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade Boom deck that is in the same kind of vein of skill that you're working on, and provide that to 1 or 2 students. And then you can kind of show their parent, I am pushing her. She's getting this work. And at first she only got 60%. Now she's getting better at 70%. And those parents will feel so much better too, knowing that you see that their child is ready for more. I call them my Zoomers. They're the ones, how when the principal comes in to observe you and you have the whole group and you have to call on someone to answer, always call them my Zoomers, because I know they're going to give like the best answer. I remember we did a unit on salmon, and my boss came in to observe something, and I knew my Zoomer was going to be able to describe and explain what an estuary was. And my boss's jaw kind of dropped, and she's like, "Okay, clearly Mrs. Larsen is teaching these kids," and she walked out. Those Zoomers, they come in handy. But another way is like when the bus is late. So again, I worked in a large city district, and we were a late school. And so the buses were trying to navigate through massive traffic, and the buses were always, always late, always late. And our kids used to sit in the hallway waiting for their buses. And if you have the Boom app on your phone, you can literally hand them the phone, and they can sit and they can access a deck right there. And as soon as they're done, boom, they hand it right back to you. They get on your bus, and your afternoon ended smoothly, instead of trying to keep kids quiet and calm while you're waiting for the bus. So I did not like having late buses, but I did like having Boom. So I actually have a couple extras. I know in the first slide, we stopped at homework, but I have a couple other ways to use Boom in your class. And one of them is with parent volunteers. And so I know last year there were no parent volunteers, but hopefully, fingers crossed, parent volunteers will be able to come back into the classroom. And I always found like it took a certain amount, I wanted them there, but it took a certain amount of training to get them to do what I wanted. Boom cards are perfect for parent volunteers because they can help get the kids headphones out of their bags. They can make sure the headphones go back in the bags. They can close out of the app. They can plug in the laptop, Chromebook, or whatever when you're done. And they get to sit next to the kid and watch what they're doing. So the parents get a way better understanding of what they actually do all day. And they're like, oh, wow, this is actually what they do. And so I loved using Boom cards with my parents. And kind of on that same vein, if you have paras or assistants in your classroom, we never had time to meet with them and go over our kids' skill level. But when I would give them Boom decks, they could really very clearly see Jaden is way more advanced than Amaya. And they could see the skills that were being worked on. And it was almost giving them a little training on what they needed to do next. So Boom is great for parent volunteers and for kind of keeping the paras in the loop of what's working. We did that one. So I'm going to just kind of wrap it up. So why should we be using Boom? Boom is engaging. It gives our kids immediate feedback. It can be used on literally every device you can think of. It gives you that all important reports feature so that you can use that information to make decisions about next steps. You can use it when you're advocating for special services. It's perfect for parent conferences. And if you are doing progress monitoring or intervention groups, you've got your data right there to help you. It's also great for differentiation because it's so easy to give one student a deck on counting and one student a deck on double-digit addition. And they're both doing Boom decks, but it's totally different skills. And then it's great for direct instruction. So you can use it in your guided reading groups, again, for that double dip. You can use it in your math and literacy centers for word work and math work and to extend a unit of study. They were made for intervention groups because of that immediate feedback and because of the data. They're fun, really fun for whole group instruction. And they're really great fillers, I'm telling you, because you're going to have those moments where there's, 5 minutes between each activity, and it's a great way to fill. And they're perfect for classroom support. So whether you're looking for homework or you're looking to have your parent volunteers help you in a really meaningful way, they're there for your fast finishers and those Zoomers. And if you have a late bus, which I hope you don't, they're great for that as well. So I would be happy to answer any questions that people might have. I hopefully there'll be somebody here if you have a question that we can help. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, so Della, we have a very good question from Jessica Johnson. It is set to be answered live. I don't know if you can see it. It says, any ideas for a student who clicks through all the answers to get to the right one instead of thinking about the question? So far, we've just had them point to one answer and then have their parent click on and the answer she chose, just to slow them down to think about the question. But it will be nice to have them be more independent. We've also tried to stick with the decks where you have to move the answer to a spot instead of just clicking it on it. But sometimes those aren't available for goals they need to work on.
Yeah, I definitely think that if they're just clicking through the buttons, you definitely need to slow them down. And so I think that you're on the right track if you're looking at items where it's more of a drag and drop. But if they're really clicking through like that, I might recommend that you put it on the smart board or project it where you really are like almost physically slowing them down because they can't just click through. So having it in that kind of bigger frame might really help. And if you are looking for a specific type of skill and you're not seeing that deck, you can reach out to Boom, or you can even reach out to me and I will share it with other sellers. If it's not something that I work on, I can share that with other sellers and say, hey, people are really looking for this type of deck. So, but I think that that is definitely an issue. If they're rushing through, they're not happy with that deck. So you might want to look at a deck also that maybe has more of a video mini lesson, maybe an escape room, something that kind of catches them a little bit more, because if they're just whipping through it, they're almost bored. So either up the ante or maybe back it up a little bit.
Perfect. So we have another question from Stacy, and it is, what's the easiest ways to assign different decks to different students?
Yeah, so if you go in to your classroom, and I'm trying to like envision it in my head right now, but you can click on the individual student and just assign that student a deck. I actually have a video on YouTube that shows walks you through exactly how to do it. If you go to YouTube and you search assigning decks to different kids and you look up me, you'll see it. But you can go into your class, click on your classroom, click on your student, and then assign it to that student.
Perfect. We have one from Tanya that is asking, can you elaborate a little bit more on FastPin, like how you use them with your class?
Yeah, FastPin is really great. And especially if you're just getting started, because sometimes people are like, I don't know, am I going to use it? You know, I got to buy this membership. I don't know. But with the FastPin, it's free, right? Your membership is free. You can use the FastPin for free. So when you go in, you can see underneath in your library, you'll see you can click FastPin and it generates a FastPin. The FastPin is good for, I believe, 14 days. And it's generally a variety of letters and numbers. And the kids, when they log into Boom, they don't put in their name. They don't have to find themselves at all. They just go in and they click FastPin and then they put in that QR742, whatever it is. And it immediately brings kids right to that FastPin. So if you use that there is when you're generating a FastPin, there is that code, but there's also a URL that is the FastPin. So if you use that URL, you can email that to somebody, they click on it, they immediately get there, or you can make that QR code out of it. So when you're looking at the FastPin, look closely on the screen, because there's one where you generate it and it gives you like the letters and numbers. But then there's another one where there's the URL, and that is that clickable link that will bring them there. I use FastPins all the time. Like I said, for group work, I mean, for QR codes at centers, I use it for homework. I use them on my phone if I'm giving kids things on my phone. And that's how I give it to my parents. I give them that URL fast link. So it's clickable.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have one more question in the Q&A section, and it is that if you have any suggestion for a high school grade 9 for English class.
I wish that I did. I know that there are literally decks on everything. Once a friend of mine, Melissa Bennett, she does great third grade work. Her store is I Heart Third Grade. Fourth grade, I heard fourth grade. We were presenting in Texas, and this woman came up and she's like, I like Boom, but I teach music. I don't think you have anything. And I said, well, let's search. And we searched Boom, and voila, there were a ton of music decks for music teachers. So I would just go into the store and search English and see what comes up, and whatever skill, like, I don't know what you do in ninth grade English. I don't know if it's grammar or comprehension, but I guarantee there are decks in there for them. And I think in ninth grade, you might just have them open up their laptops or their Chromebooks, and they can access it right there in the classroom. They would be super independent. I apologize, my dog is barking.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say, that if you look up in the store, in the Boom store, you'll be able to find like very different decks from all grades and all subjects. So we encourage you to go to the store and just type like the subject you're teaching, or you can filter your search by grades. And I assure you, you find some amazing decks there. So thank you, Della, for answering those questions. Our Boom agents will be answering the questions from the chat. Right now, I'm going to be showing you how you can, if you have more questions after this webinar, how you can request help from Boom. So I'm going to share my screen right now.
And also you can, if you want, you can reach out to me. It's dellalarsen@gmail.com, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, Della has an amazing blog and YouTube channel. You can look it up. Della, if you want, you can put that in the chat so they can go and follow you and see your store. Okay. So right here, if you're in our platform, you'll be able to see this blue help button. So if you click there, it will show you the different FAQs that we have. So for example, we look for the calendar. Let's see, I want to know what about points. You click enter and it will take you to the different FAQs that we have and articles. So it will tell you more information. So if you have any more questions, you can request a ticket, like a help ticket, where you email us. If you click here, you'll be able to type your email and all of your information. Also from our page, our platform, if you go to settings and then scroll down to help center, click here, you'll be able to do that ticket, like help ticket. You can put the subject of what you want, and here you can type your question. You can select like the group, if it's customer service, finance, and all that. If you need language support, right now we have French, Spanish, and English, and the priority, and you can send that. You can also call us or you can schedule a call. If you click here, it will take you to our FAQ or article about how you can schedule a call for us to call you in a specific date and time. So this is super helpful. And yeah, so that's how you can get help from Boom Learning. We encourage you to join and register our future webinars. We have some amazing webinars. I saw on the chat people asking like if we're going to be teaching how to create your decks. We have some webinars coming up about like how to create your decks. We have some in Spanish. We have how to use Boomcard for speech therapy and all of that. So if you click here, you'll be able to see all of the future webinars and you can join. Yeah, reminder, we're going to have the recording available for you. You'll be able to watch it on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. We'll be also sending a follow-up email to those who register with the link for the recording. So reminder, we are sending the survey feedback form in the chat. So if you can fill that up, it will be pretty helpful for us and we'll be super grateful because we love to learn from your feedback. So that's it for this webinar. Let me stop sharing. And yeah, here. Okay, so thank you all for joining. We're going to keep this for like 4 more minutes open so you can fill that survey link. And if you have any more questions, we can answer those in these 4 minutes. Thank you very much, Della. You're amazing. This was super good. I wanted to read some of the comments that I saw. One was from Dawn that says, terrific idea with the ghost idea.
Yeah.
Laurie says, love the reports feature. Thank you, Laurie. We're so happy. And we have a comment from Susa saying, Della, your excitement is great. Makes me want to use Boom for my students. So that is super good. So thank you very much, Della, and thank you all for joining. We'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I know you are busy, and to give up this time, I truly, truly appreciate you spending time here tonight trying to make life better for your kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so bye-bye, guys. We'll see you in the next one.